Hello and welcome to episode 246 of my podcast all about knitting and crochet and my yarn shop here in Wiesbaden, Germany. I'm Kiko and today is September 30th, 2024. Today I'm wearing one of my oldest scarves that I still have. I crocheted it probably some 10 or 12 years ago when I was still working at a yarn shop. And one of the yarns that we had was the Rigato, which is half wool and half acrylic. It's still in Germany. It's still available, and it comes in these many colored balls. And that year, when I crocheted this scarf, those 5 colorways were new, and I don't really know how I got the idea of making a scarf with all the new colors, but I was probably looking at the colors and thinking they do sort of go together nicely. And I started crocheting with one of them and crocheted a granny square, and I realized if I just added 5 of these granny squares together, that would make a nicely sized scarf. So that's what I did. And originally I wanted to crochet 3 more of those and sew them together as a blanket, but I never got further than crocheting the second one. And I really enjoy wearing them as scarves so much that I never crocheted number 3 and 4. And back then I crocheted normal proper granny squares. Today I would probably do the spiral granny squares that we are crocheting in our crochet along at the moment. To make sure that the color changes weren't interrupted by the end and beginning of round. Even though with this kind of yarn, it doesn't really show. I can't see, at first glance, I can't really tell where the beginning and end of round was with this yarn. But anyway, I would probably still prefer to do a spiral granny square, so I wouldn't have to concentrate on the end and beginning of round, but I could just crochet round and round and round until all the yarn in one ball was gone. And then with this scarf, you could see how much crochet you got out of one ball of yarn, and you could see all the colors, because from the way a ball is wound, you can only see a few colors on the outside, and sometimes you can sort of peek through and try to get at the other colors. But it's difficult, and especially with the ones with the colorways that had some of the glitter in it, it's only there with some of the colors. So I think some customers were quite happy to know how much of the glitter they would get in one of those balls. So yeah, I was really pleased with that idea back then. And for quite a while, this scarf was hanging in the shop, so customers could look at it. But then I got it back and I've been wearing it ever since. And the pullover I'm wearing is one that I did not knit myself. A friend of mine knit it for her son, and I helped her a little bit because in the beginning the sleeves were a bit short. I helped her lengthen them, and because I tend to try everything on that I knit on, I put the pullover on and I realized it really fits me quite nicely. It's a bit tighter than I usually knit my pullovers, but I don't think it's too tight. The sleeves are the perfect length for my arms. And so I said to her if she wanted to, she could give it to me after her son grew out of it. And also her daughter, who actually gave it to me before she grew out of it because she couldn't wear this kind of yarn on her skin. It was too scratchy for her. And then after a while, she said I could have it. And this was my favorite colorway in that MKal series. It's one of the black dragon colorways where there's a bit of black yarn next to the blue and turquoise yarn, and but I sold it really quickly, so I didn't have enough yarn to knit something for myself, and I was really happy that I could have the pullover that my friend knit for her son. And she used the pattern Raglano by Nicolor. It's a free pattern on Ravelry. It's a perfect pattern, I think, if you want to knit your first top-down raglan pullover. And yeah, the only thing that you have to be careful of, as long as you haven't knit the neckband, it might be difficult to get the right sleeve length. So I always encourage people to first do the neckband and then finish the sleeves to make sure it's the right length. Yeah. So much to what I'm wearing. Then on to finished objects. I have 2 finished objects today and only 1 new cast on. Quite happy with myself. But there are 2 new cast-ons coming next week. So I'm not quite sure I can finish 2 projects this week. We'll see about that. But I signed up for 2, or I bought 2 patterns for mystery knit-alongs that both start next week. So those 2 projects are set, and I'll tell you all about them next week. But first, my bigger and older finished project is my black cotton summer cardigan. It's a pattern by from a magazine by Lana Grossa, and I knit it years ago out of white yarn. I used the Secondo then, which was the original yarn in the pattern. But this time I used the Catania, which is a pure cotton yarn, a fairly simple yarn, not very expensive. But I thought it's a nice yarn for a summer cardigan, and I'm really happy with how the cardigan turned out. So the gauge with this yarn was a little different from the white one, but basically I mostly used the same number of stitches. The 2 differences is that I cast on more stitches for the ribbing, but that was only because I didn't pay attention. So I decreased stitches after the ribbing, but I quite like the way this looks. And I cast on fewer stitches for the sleeves than with the white yarn, because the black yarn is the gauge is a bit comes out a bit bigger. So with the same number of stitches, it comes out a bit bigger, and I didn't want the sleeves to be longer than with the white cardigan, so I cast on half a pattern repeat less stitches for this cardigan, but I actually knit the same number of rows. I had been thinking of doing fewer rows, but then I was afraid it would be too small, and I'm really happy that I changed my mind there and did the same number of rows, because it's nowhere near being too big in any way. So it kind of fits perfectly the way it is. It's a bit longer than the white one, but that's perfect because the white one's actually on the short side, and this is now really perfect. I do hope the weather will be fine enough next week that I can wear this with something warm underneath so I don't get too cold here, but I would love to show you how this looks on me. Yeah, and I'll try and do that. And interesting fact, I used the exact same buttons on this cardigan as I used on the white, just in black. So I have the same button. I had them in white, I have them in black, and I have them in red and in blue because I like them so much. They have this nice pattern on them. Not quite sure whether I think the camera picks it up a bit. So there's like a little flower pattern on the buttons, and I really like this. Yeah, so this is my black summer cardigan. It got finished a little later than summer seems to be finished here. But yeah, we'll see about that next week. And the other finished project is a rather small project, and it's even smaller than I originally intended, and that's my double knitted sock. I decided to only knit one of them. So when I cast these socks on, I thought they would be a German size 37, but because I knit them shorter now, they are only a 28-29, which is like a kid's sock. And I thought if I knit a second one, I will probably give them to somebody to wear them. But I would rather have a sock here in my shop so I can show it to people. Because the interesting thing about double knitting is that you always have the opposite colors in the opposite pattern on the other side. So one side is a colorful sock with dark green snails. And now I have a dark green sock with colorful snails. And I love it. And it was a lot of fun knitting it. I think the sock itself is fantastic. And I can't wait to knit socks that I or somebody else can actually wear. The pattern was written by a friend of mine named Alessa Martini. And she actually finished writing and rewriting the pattern and has published them on Ravelry. They're available for free as a free download. So far only in German. I'm not quite sure whether she's planning a translation or not, But if you know German, you can download them or you can put the pattern through a translator. She does expect you to know how to knit socks and how to do double knitting. So she doesn't explain either of these. All she wrote down is how to knit socks, how to knit double knitted socks. So anything that's important for that, she put down, like number of stitches and how to do the heel and how to do the toe. But as I said, she does expect you to already know how to knit socks. Yeah, so really happy with my little double knitted sock. It'll live in my shop so that people can have a look at it and be inspired to knit some for themselves. By the way, another change that I made, I cast on the stitches differently from what she wrote in her pattern, because I really like this way of casting on stitches. It's the way the Sockomatician casts on stitches for double knitting. So if you are interested in that, he has a YouTube video about how to do that. Yeah, so that's the finished objects for today. Then on to works in progress. I have fewer projects that I did not knit on, but I didn't knit on the Abloom shawl, on the Evenstar skirt. I didn't touch any of the blankets, and I did not continue knitting on the Vinahop pullover by Nicolor. But all the other projects got worked on, and as usual, I start with the socks. And I think the oldest sock on my needle right now are the Surprise Sockalong Popportunity socks by Stephen West. It was a mystery knit along when I started it, but the mystery is long since been lifted, and I'm still knitting on the first sock. So my sister chose the colors. So the color pops are not popping a lot, but I still like the color combination, and especially my sister loves them. So this is the cuff. It's a brioche heel flap, then a normal heel turn. Then the top of the foot was knit with short rows in garter stitch. And again, the color pops should be popping out here where the holes are, but they're not popping a lot. And then the last bit that I knit is the sole. So I finished knitting the sole. And as you can see, I put the stitches on hold because I decided to do the toes once I finish the second sock, or once I have the second sock to this point. And as far as I remember, Stephen West gives you two different instructions for the right and left sock. And I want to do the different cuffs for the two socks. And then once I've done all that, I want my sister to decide which sock should be the right and which should be the left one, because then I can knit her anatomical toes again, and she can always wear them the way she prefers. And then she can also tell me which color she wants for the toes. So if it were my socks, I would probably do different colors. Knowing her, she'll probably choose the same color, but that's up to her. It's her socks. They're going to be her socks, so she has to decide. So I hope to start the second one this week. That's those socks. Then the next sock is the Bellflower sock. It was a Sock Madness bonus pattern this year, and I have finished the first sock. I'm using this colorful opal yarn from the Rainforest series this year, and I continued the second sock. Did I show you the beginning of the sock already? I don't remember. Maybe I think I showed you the toe. So this is an interesting toe because you first knit one half and then the other half, which is the reason that the colors aren't the same for the top and the bottom of the toe. But then after the toe, you start knitting in the round, and you start the lace and cable pattern that later will look like flowers, which is why the pattern is called Bellflower. And I hope to, continue on those every now and then and try and get them done at some point. No rush, but just don't want it to drag too long. Then the next sock is another colorway from the Rainforest series this year. It's the Tiger colorway, and I'm knitting shorty socks from one of my nephews. And last week I showed you like half the heel, and then so the first thing I did was finish the heel. I put in this neon stripe again, because this is kind of the idea with these neon shorty socks. And then I thought, oh, now it's a simple project and I can just knit round and round. And I did a few rounds and then put it aside. And then later, when I had a friend over to visit, I picked it up thinking, oh, I can just keep knitting. And I had a look at it and I realized that with the first sock, I'd done these short rows after I finished the heel, and I completely forgot about those. So while I was talking to my friend, I was knitting backwards, undoing the 2-3 rounds that I'd done, and then put in the short rows just to make sure that the leg part of the shorty socks and just come forward a little bit. I find it hard to explain why I think the short rows at this point make sense, but for me they do. So yeah, I repeated the short rows for the second sock, so those 2 socks will be the same as well. But now it's a mindless project that I can just pick up and knit round and round until I have enough rounds to do the toe. And because this is a second sock, I don't even have to think about it. I just have to knit the same number of rounds as with the first sock. So easy, mindless project. Then I added a few rounds to the 2-color brioche hat that I am knitting. It's a pattern out of this beautiful book, Die Masche und das Meer, where all the patterns are sort of have some inspiration from the ocean. And this is supposed to be a fisherman's hat. And I added just a few rounds, as I said, but I am pretty sure that I am now into the second color repeat. So this, I think somewhere around here is where I started the hat. So it's not exactly the same, and I have to turn it around a bit to be really sure. But I'm pretty sure that I'm into this lighter bit now, and I will have lighter yarn for some more rounds to come. Later, the brim will get folded round, so I will either have a lighter hat with a dark brim or the other way around. Yeah, so this is definitely a mindless project. It's just that I need to look because of the 2-color brioche. Then last week I showed you the beginning of the colorwork mittens that I am knitting out of the Lopi yarn. And I added a few rounds, but only a few, not very many. So this is the stripy pattern in the palm of the hand, and this is the pattern on the back of the hand where there will be 2 cats, and this is the first cat's first foot and beginning of her leg. So not too much. I hope to get more done this week, but no promises. We'll see what happens. Then what else? Yeah, I showed you the square that I am knitting for the Viva Vittoria happening in Kassel next year. And there we knit or crochet squares that have 50 centimeters, that are 50 centimeters wide and long. And then there will be a big happening next year where they will focus on the problem of violence against women. And then later they will always sew 4 of the squares together to make blankets, and they are going to be sold and the money will be donated. So I said I will take part in that project. For one, I will knit and crochet squares to donate, but also just to let people know that this is happening and encourage them to knit and crochet along. So the first square that I am that I'm knitting, I used 8-ply sock yarn by Opal, and this is all I have left from my first 150-gram ball. And I first cast on just some stitches. I think I did 40 stitches, and then I knit until I had a length of 50 centimeters. Then I cast off the stitches, turned it round, picked up stitches, and now I'm knitting sideways until I have 50 centimeters again. And I think it's quite funny the way the colors come out completely differently. The stripes look different, even though it's the same yarn. So I quite like this, this fact. And I'm pretty sure that the one ball won't be enough. And at first I thought, well, I have quite a bit of yarn in that color left. I can use a second ball. But now that I've seen how far I've already got, I think I won't need too much to finish the square. So I will probably not start a second ball in that color, but I will just look at my leftover yarns that I have in 8-ply. I could even use some 4-ply yarn held double, but I will finish the square with some leftover yarn. Yep, so that's that. And yeah, another mindless project. Especially as I don't have to be careful if I've reached the 50 centimeters, because I'm very confident the yarn won't be enough, so I can just knit until that's gone. And then when I start with the other yarn, then I will start paying attention to the length and not knit too much. And because they're always connecting 4 squares together, it's important that they do have the same size. Okay, then we come to my one new cast on this year, and it's another sock yarn project, but not socks, and it's also a rather small project. And this time I'm using a 6-ply yarn. So the socks that I showed you were all 4-ply yarn. The square Viva Vittoria square is an 8-ply sock yarn, and this is now a 6-ply sock yarn. So it's in between the other two yarn weights, and it's another rainforest colorway, and it's the parrot. And I just love the way they dyed this yarn. And I am knitting another baby surprise jacket. So anyone who's been watching my videos for a while has seen me knit a baby surprise jacket. And even if you are new, in every intro to every video, I hold up a baby surprise jacket. So it's one of my favorite patterns, all-time favorite patterns. And I am knitting the cardigan out of this colorway, and my sister picked a different colorway from the Opal Rainforest series, and we are knitting them for 2 twin babies, so twin girls, and so they are getting warm and colorful cardigans, surprise jackets. So there's not much happening yet. I cast on the stitches, I started with the decreases, and yeah, I'm pretty sure you know what a baby surprise jacket is. And if you don't, then just Google it and you'll find out. Okay, then on to garments. And I continued knitting on my Lanatus pullover again. That's the colorwork pullover I'm knitting out of the Shetland, is it Shetland Maschen, I think? Next time, this pullover is supposed to be finished and done, and then I'll show you the book again, and then I'll know what it's called. So I used, by the way, this is the same color that my friend used for the ribbing and cuff and neckline in this pullover. So I already know I like this color. But then I used a Hundertwasser colorway for all the color work. And last time I showed you the finished sleeves, and then I added one of the big patterns, and then I tried it on and I weighed the yarn, and I realized I had enough yarn to add 2 more of those bigger stripes, but I didn't want to. The pullover would just be too long for me. It would reach a length that I'm not very comfortable with. So instead of doing the pattern that's supposed to follow after this pattern, which would have been this one, I went straight to this pattern, which is the one that I started with and I ended with at the sleeves. So now all the pattern next to the ribbing is always this pattern, and it means I finished with the color work. So I cut this off, I weighed it, I have 11 grams left. So I only used 89 grams of colorful yarn to knit all this color work, which is crazy. But now I need to do the ribbing. This is the second 100-gram ball of yarn for my main color, and I'm very confident that this is going to be enough to do the ribbing. I'm not 100% sure yet how long I want the ribbing to be. I will probably start with the number of rows that I did for the neckline, and then if I feel it's not long enough, I may go to this length. But I don't know yet. It's another case of knit and try on, knit and try on. but I'm very confident I can finish the ribbing this week and show you a finished project next week. Yay! Yeah, so that's that. And then I added a few rounds to the Mamaki dress. And I realized if you do something big and it's all in the same color and you don't have a pattern, it's really difficult to see if you've done anything or not. So I know I added at least 8 rounds, which is not a lot, but it's quite a few stitches, and it is growing. Even if it's growing slowly, it is growing. And I just wanted to show you, remind you of what I was doing, and I'll keep knitting on it. I still have quite some yarn left, so I'm really excited to find out how long this dress is going to be. So that's all the garments, and then I could show you the Goff's Place Mystery Knit Along again. So last week I had knit on it the week before last, but last week I added a few rows, not too many, but slowly getting there. And I think today I'll just show you the part that I am knitting on and not the whole thing because it's so big. And I'll show you more next week or when I finish with this section. So this is clue 4 of the Goff's Place Mystery Knit Along, and it's another quarter circle like clue 3 was, but with a colorwork pattern. I'm ruining my yarn with my needles. It's not very good. Anyway, so it started off with the pink and blue and then went to the pink and purple. Then we changed both colors, and now I'm back at the pink and purple, and the short rows have come up to here. So I have to get them to almost right to the end of the row, and then I can change the purple to the blue, and then I can do the last segment of this part of the shawl. And I've realized that the reason this is getting so big is that I'm not getting gauge, and I didn't do a gauge swatch because I thought it's a shawl, it doesn't really matter. And in a way it doesn't. The only things affected by a different gauge are the size that you end up with, and with a shawl it's not really a problem if it's a bit bigger or smaller, but also the yardage. So the reason that I almost ran out of yarn is partly because I'm knitting a lot looser than I'm supposed to, and also because I changed I used a different color here than I was supposed to. But then I was supposed to use the white, so I don't think it would have made a big difference. But yeah, so I will remember going forth that if I use alpaca yarn, I do have to have a different needle than when knitting with normal sheep yarn. Sheep yarn? Yeah, sounds a bit funny, but you know what I mean. Alpaca is just a different kind of yarn, and it behaves differently, and yeah, and maybe I should do a gauge swatch next time. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Yeah, so that's that. And oh, and that's it. I did not knit on I did not crochet on the spiral granny square that I am crocheting for our crochet along. I had started using the Hundertwasser full ball of yarn to add to my square, which I want to crochet big enough that I can fold it and use as a triangular shawl. And I was just too busy with all the other things, so I did not continue on that. But I promised to bring it back next week, and I will crochet at least a little on it. Big promise, even though I have to start 2 new projects next week. We'll see. I'll tell you about them next week. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!